students to keep their mics off, and if they have any questions as we go along, if they just pop them in the conversation box, and I will ask them to Sophie. So I think the first thing probably to talk to you about, if possible, would be sort of your experience of choosing A-levels and life in sixth form, and how you made those decisions and how you then chose what to study at university.
Okay, so I left Merchant Taylors in 2008. So from kind of year 10 onwards, I wanted to study medicine at university. So that kind of pretty much determined what A-levels I would choose. So I chose maths, biology, chemistry and RS. I really enjoyed the lessons during my A-levels. I had a really good teacher, and the A-level at the time was all into ethics as well, so I really enjoyed those modules. So I then dropped maths after AS, and continued with chemistry, biology and RE. I was lucky enough to be offered a place at the University of Liverpool to study medicine. I ended up with a B in chemistry though, so I got ABB at my A-levels. And university specifically wanted the A in chemistry at the time. They were okay to accept the B in biology, but not in chemistry. So as well, you probably don't know yet what results day is like, but it's quite manic. You know, you're under pressure trying to make a decision. So I spoke to lots of different careers advisors on the day and decided to go through clearing and to do biomedical sciences. I was accepted at the University of Liverpool because I'd already secured a place for halls, etc., etc. So then I went off to do biomedical sciences, and the plan was to always then apply postgraduately to do medicine after my undergraduate. Up until my third year, that was always my plan really. And then during my third year, I did my dissertation, which was split into two. So I had a research library module and then a lab module. Absolutely fell in love with both elements. Was really proud of my dissertation. Through contacts I'd built there, I found out about a master's in research, so it was an MRes in translational medicine. So biomedical sciences, my undergraduate, it was very, very broad. So there were like plant modules, animal modules, chemistry, pure biology, and I found that a little bit overwhelming. So I quite liked the kind of healthcare translational type of modules that I was doing during my undergraduate, hence me deciding to do this MRes. So my MRes was in the Department of Gastroenterology at the University of Liverpool. And I rotated from 3 different labs to do 3 different projects. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And then my final project was with my future PhD supervisor. He offered me to continue my studies and study a PhD, which I took straight away. So I started that in 2013. 2012, started my PhD. So it was 3 years funding, and that was looking for a non-invasive method of diagnosing inflammatory bowel disease and bowel cancer. So I'll get into scientific. The current methods of diagnosing inflammatory bowel disease are quite invasive. They're quite expensive. They're not sometimes. Individual may go through these unnecessary, very invasive tests and then be diagnosed with something like irritable bowel syndrome or celiac disease or something more diet related. So we were looking for a specific test, a non-invasive specific test for diagnosing inflammatory bowel disease. And we had use of a big piece of kit called Gastroenterology mass spectrometry. So I'm going to get a little bit discussed in here. So my supervisor is a gastroenterology consultant in the Royal Liverpool. So he looks at patients with inflammatory bowel disease. And way back at the beginning of medicine, doctors first started reporting that specific diseases have specific smells. So I won't go into too much detail. You can ask me questions on this. So my supervisor had been working his whole career really on the concept that if you were to heat up a biological sample, for example, urine, saliva, feces, blood, you would emit a smell in the same way as if you were cooking a chicken in your oven. Once you start cooking, the kitchen smells of chicken. So the idea is that that would emit these volatile organic compounds, and we wanted to be able to detect these compounds to see if we could find a biomarker, a non-invasive biomarker to detect inflammatory bowel disease. So previously the work had been done in humans, so we were taking that one step further, using some animal models. So the work was really successful. We did that for 3 years, and then in my final year we had use of a sensor technology kit, which was essentially so a gas chromatography mass spectrometry is a huge piece of kit that would take up a whole bench, and testing it can take 24 hours, 48 hours of someone very manually being part of that testing. The whole plan would be to get something that was quite small and be able to just sit in the hospital for the doctor or nurse to just be able to test the sample there and then. So this sensor technology was a little bit smaller and something that we wanted to be able to work with. So that's when my first kind of passion started on how we commercialise something that is showing great potential in the lab and be able to kind of fast track that into healthcare. So I'm going back to 2015 now. I don't know what the statistic is now, but a couple of years ago, you know, the average time to get something from bench to bedside was 17 years, which was just, you know, ridiculous. So when I was coming to the end of my PhD, I saw a job advert for a company. Sorry, getting distracted. For a company, a business consultancy company, that was specialising in intellectual property. So that is protecting your novel pieces of equipment to be able to then have a route to market. So that's where I then started my career post-research. I stayed there for nearly 3 years. We worked with university research groups, hospitals, large pharmaceutical companies, and we'd either work with big groups or small individuals. My role in particular, towards kind of the last 6 months of my role there, was working very closely with the NHS trusts. Then I got connected into Alderhay, and they were looking to take a team internally that was very similar to what we were doing at this company. So then I started at Alderhay in 2017, and I'm still there now. So it's a very similar role. So we work with clinicians, small and medium enterprise, so that's really small companies, well-established companies or brand new companies. We work with them to get their product to market or repurpose an existing product. And this could be a digital device, a piece of medical technology, or both. The job is very, very varied. I've just realised I've gone on and on from your original question.
Fine. What does an average day look like now then for you?
Well, currently in these circumstances that we're living in at the moment, I am working from home, so it is very much living through screens. We have a lot of video calls. But a normal day, you know, outside of our current circumstances, I'm responsible for a portal that we have where we invite people to submit a problem and a solution, or a solution, and we kind of triage them both and match where we think is appropriate. So problems may come from NHS staff, specifically at Alderhay, but also from companies that we're working with as well. So then we would take that idea, meet with the clinician or member of staff, find out a little bit more, and then we would do a lot of due diligence, search different databases. We've got a huge platform and kind of portfolio of what we would look through to make sure that, you know, their problem is not just their own problem, or we can not quickly solve it, or somebody else in another hospital or another organisation has already solved it. So we identify how novel that problem or idea may be, and then we'd come up with some sort of strategy, taking into consideration any intellectual property the idea may have, what the current market is like, what competitors are already out there. So if we were going to suggest a spin-out company, for example, we want to make sure that that time and investment into that type of route to market is going to be worth it. You're not going to be, you know, trying to build a new car, for example, and compete with Ford, BMW, Mercedes. That's, you know, just an example. So very.
Oh, sorry. Can you give any examples of any recent problems that have come to you then that you've looked at?
One project that I'm working on now that's quite late on in development was a radiologist was finding that a patient coming in, for example, for an MRI scan should maybe take half an hour, but actually it was taking maybe close to an hour for an appointment because they were very nervous. That, you know, in Alderhay these are children, so the child was very nervous, didn't really understand what was going to happen to them, and the radiologist was regularly getting up a YouTube channel on their phone just to distract the child, and, you know, making sure that you could have a sticker to reward them and just make them feel a little bit better. So we came up with a concept to have a patient experience app to familiarise, reward and distract children. So we had a good look at the internet to see what else is out there. I'm going back a couple of years now when this concept first came together. So we now have an app called Alder Play that has been launched in 2018, that has wayfinding. So anyone planning a visit to the hospital, either for an outpatient or a long stay, can familiarise themselves with the hospital, find out where they're going. You know, the parent can plan parking, you know, were there any disabled toilets, and etc., where you can get a drink or a snack. When they're in the hospital, there's games and videos that they can help distract themselves. Other staff members as well will also use Alder Play. And we also have videos on there of what happens when you come in for a blood test or come in for an MRI. And then they also have a reward element. So there's stickers, like virtual stickers, in and around the hospital. So as the child is kind of navigating themselves around the hospital, you can kind of scan the sticker and it would unlock a game or another video. So when that app was launched, the deployment team collected lots of feedback from staff and patients. So to cut a long story short, we've collated all of that and now working on version 2 of this app. So we're going to transform it from like a standalone app to a kind of versatile platform, so it should be able to link in with like a patient portal for Alderhay. So it's going to be like the front door for a child, and also for the parent to come into the hospital.
So how many questions do you tend to get and responses? I mean, is that quite a busy service that you offer then?
It is quite busy. It does go up and down, but it is quite busy. But not most of the time, but quite a lot of the time, you know, we take like a multidisciplinary approach to problems. You know, we work very closely with HR, finance, all of the other different corporate support teams around the hospital to make sure that, you know, it's great having a really good idea, but actually having that implemented and adopted requires more than just our team. So we do have to kind of prioritise problems, especially in the current, you know, climate, but the team's growing, so that's good.
I've noticed that sort of part of the group, quite a chunk of them are students that aren't very aware or interested in medicine. So I just wondered, have you got any advice for those students? Because often I meet with them on a one-to-one and worry about their motivations or if they understand what they're undertaking. So have you got any advice for the year 11s and lower 6s in this chat that are thinking about medicine and medical related professions?
I mean, personally, I thought for a long time, would I regret my decision? And I can hand on heart say no, not for a minute. I'm not saying I would have even had the chance, I might not have even got into postgraduate medicine. But I remember on A-level results day when I was deciding to inquire to go through clearing, I had a conversation with a professor at the university. Just by coincidence, he was the one manning the phone on the other side. And he ended up being a professor who lectured me through an undergraduate, and he didn't know anything about me. I just said, oh, I didn't get in to do medicine, do my A-level results, allow me to then come in and study in undergrad. And he was like, yes, and you can continue and do a PhD and become a different type of doctor. I'm thinking at the time, no, that is not for me. And it's just the way life goes. But I think medicine as a profession, my dad's a doctor. I work very closely in my job, always have done very closely with doctors. It's an absolutely wonderful, very rewarding career choice. I think it's hard. Some of my colleagues and friends, especially in the current climate, it is very hard and very testing, but are probably, maybe one of the most rewarding careers out there. But keeping options open or just keeping eyes open to alternative kind of medical scientific careers that are related to, the profession of a doctor is good as well. Just to, you never know what opportunity may come up. It isn't just kind of one track that you can go down to kind of get that reward as well. So like my job now is very rewarding. You just don't know where you end up. But I think it's just work very hard during your GCSEs and A-levels, just so you can always look back and think you couldn't have done any more. And wherever you end up, you can't argue with that.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, actually. So how is working from home for you then at the moment? Because obviously we've been doing a few of these calls and everyone's finding it slightly different. So how are you feeling at home?
It's okay, yes. I think each week that goes by, you get more and more used to it. I have a 15-month-old baby, so that's a little bit hard trying to juggle. Not luckily that my husband's not working, obviously I would prefer him to be in work, but I'm lucky to have an extra pair of hands for childcare. But it's we're lucky to be able to continue doing what we're doing remotely, and to support the rest of the hospital in these worrying times. So no, it's fine.
We've started to get a couple of questions through, and if any other students have any questions, please pop them in the conversation box. So Molly's asked, is research the main thing graduates do after a biomedical science degree?
Not at all, no. So there were multiple career options that I looked into. I think people would recommend maybe doing a master's if you were interested, because you don't have to do a research master's either. It just kind of gives you that extra year of experience. So my friend did the same undergraduate degree as me, and he went on to do a kind of more taught master's. He was able to have experience in industry. So now he works for a large company in Speak. So you can also look at other careers. So for example, I nearly went down the path of an intellectual property attorney, which again is a really good career. They do it's very competitive, so I'm just thinking, actually I probably looked into that more during the end of my PhD actually. But you can also, another friend I was in uni with is now a medical writer. She really enjoyed the kind of writing side of her degree and masters. So she's got a really good job as a medical writer. You could go straight in from undergrad to these graduate schemes that a lot of the kind of large pharmaceutical companies offer, which are very kind of hands-on, and they've got great development paths through there. But there's lots of different careers that you could also go into teaching as well. Like everywhere's desperate for science teachers. But no, I mean, I think when you are a scientist, you naturally are into researching, whether that is in the library or in the lab. But it's just applying those kind of transferable skills into different careers. You could do anything. You could do law, I suppose, after an undergrad. You could look into any kind of career path.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Sophie? So if you were talking to your 18-year-old self again, then Sophie, obviously the stress of clearing, what advice would you give to our students?
Gosh. Everything works out in the end. It really does. I hope it does anyway. I think you just have to, what Merchant Taylor's taught me anyway was, you work hard but play hard as well. Like make sure that you have a balance of a kind of really good work-life balance. But in order to have that life, you need to make sure you work hard as well. And kind of really enjoy, I don't really want to sound patronising at all, but really enjoy this time whilst you're in school doing your A-levels or GCSEs, because it is such a wonderful time and it really is setting you up for such an exciting future. I'm still yet to, look at new exciting things that are ahead of me as well. But I think try not to make rash decisions on results. And just listen to your advisors, listen to your teachers, try and have somebody that, who's with you on results day that kind of knows and supports you emotionally and be able to help you make that decision should you find yourself in that position where you've got to maybe not got the results that you anticipated you'd get. And always have a backup plan.
Yeah, I think some of the best students are ones that have a plan B, almost definitely.
Yeah. And that's good because that's what merchants, when I was there, always encouraged. I remember, don't know if anybody remembers Mrs. Custard.
Yeah.
She was a physics teacher. So as soon as I went in to collect my A-level results, I literally was opening the envelope and she just kind of stood next to me. Obviously, she must have known. And so she was kind of with me in that immediate reaction. And I actually was on maternity leave last year, walking in my local village and bumped into her. And she was like, "Oh, I've always wondered what you've ended up doing." So it's just nice because the teachers remember for years to come as well, that help that they've offered.
Somebody's asked, what's the best thing about your job now?
The best thing about my job now is working all day with the children. And seeing, even everyone has an up and down day or a bad day, but you just have to step out of your kind of comfort zone of where you're working and just walk into the hospital. And it is just the most happy, joyous place to work. Considering, there's lots of sick children there, it's a lovely place to work, staff and patients.
And somebody's asked, what are your best memories of school?
My best memories of school, oh gosh, my year was just great. My whole year, I think we were really lucky. Probably maybe because it's a later memory, but sixth form. And I think in particular our last day of school was just amazing. The sun was shining, everything was just really nice. The whole year just got on really well. It was just a really good day to kind of end a really good 7 years. My friends, yeah, I think everything really. It's hard on that.
Does anybody else have any further questions then? There's nothing coming through at the moment, Sophie. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I would just maybe say as well, from when you're applying for university, you start is it still UCAS form?
Still UCAS, yeah.
Someone told me when I think I was in my first year of undergrad, I went to like a CV workshop or some sort of careers day, and someone said to me, always keep track of your whole kind of career, almost like a big CV from like kind of day one up, because you never know when you're going to need it. So I've always done that. I've always got like multiple CVs saved, or like a timeline of what I've done, what I've learned, all of the different kind of transferable skills, and I think that's been really useful to help me whenever I've been applying for jobs or speaking to different people or building contacts or anything like that. I think that's really good thing to continue post school as well.
Somebody's asked actually quite specifically, how is the coronavirus affecting the oncology unit in Alderhay?
Good question. So it's kind of business as usual for the oncology department. So where the hospital have been able to, they've managed to send some patients home that were inpatients. So with the right care packages, including like staff coming to visit them within the home, making sure the home's okay. Because as all hospitals are doing at the moment, they're kind of reorganising themselves operationally and in clinical areas to prepare for any patients that may need to be admitted with coronavirus. So, but as I say, it's business as usual. There's lots of children that are still very sick without coronavirus. So the team is still very much continuing as normal, just taking those extra precautions.
That's really good. Does anybody else have any other questions? Doesn't look like it, Sophie. So what I'll probably say is, if you hang on there, and if I ask the students to leave the chat one by one, and then if anyone else has any further questions, then I'll ask you them. Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem.
We'll be the last men standing. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks very much, Sophie. That was incredibly interesting and great to hear an alternative path to medicine, but with similar subjects. I think that's really useful for our students to hear about. Certainly another alternative. If you have any further questions, you can leave the chat now, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your Wednesday, and I'll see you all back on Skype next week for another chat. Anyone have any further questions, then please pop them in the conversation box and I'll ask Sophie.
Coronavirus.